Welcome to Combat Zone with Ben the Bane Davis on Stadium.
Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. I'm your host, Ben the Bane Davis. A very stacked episode that we have today, recapping a huge UFC pay-per-view, as well as a blockbuster BKFC event, and some interesting updates on my favorite current trend in combat sports, the UFC White House event. And we're also going to touch on Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's smashing machine. Is it smashing at the box office, though? That becomes the ultimate question. Guest today, we are talking to former boxing champion Alfonso Lopez. He is angling for a BKFC debut. When we speak with him, we'll see how close he is to it. But before we get to all of this fun, exciting action to dig through, I want to provide you guys with my weekend, of course. Now, today was a big weekend. I think in the last couple pieces of programming, I've sort of said, hey, this weekend didn't do much. Didn't do a ton. I was just hanging out. But this weekend, there was a lot on the docket because it was my girlfriend's 28th birthday. So we had to pull out all the stops. I mean, look, last year, she was not the greatest of fans of the presents that I got. Totally fair. I dropped the ball last year. This year, though, I'll tell you what we swung on. So got her a new skillet, some new pots and pans for the kitchen. Her nonstick skillet is cooked. It's done. It's very old. We needed a new one. Got her some mugs, too. She's a big mug girl. So we got her some mugs. And also got her some tickets to My Chemical Romance, big band that she loves. They're coming to Phoenix for the first time in about 18 years. Next September, figured I'd snatch up some tickets. And then I got a cameo. Guys, don't we love cameos? From one of her favorite shows, Psych. The guy who plays Gus is on cameo, Dule Hill. Got a little cameo from him, and bada bing, bada boom. This year, she loved it. But unfortunately, not all was as good as the presents. We went to Sedona, and it was cursed, beyond cursed. Let me tell you about this. So we drive up there, and we decide, okay, we got an Airbnb. We drop things off the Airbnb. We decide, okay, let's do a nice little dinner, right? It's day one of day two. Let's do a nice little dinner. So we're driving into Sedona, right? Our Airbnb is about 30, 40 minutes away from the actual downtown. And halfway there, my tire explodes. My front left tire, boom, gone. I was stunned. I've never encountered a tire problem on the road before, much less on like an interstate. And so we pull off, get the spare out, take the lug nuts off, boom, do a little replacement. And instead of risking it and saying, it, we got the spare, let's just continue with our plans, as follows. I sort of was like, oh, okay, maybe, let's think about this. And we agreed, let's head to Walmart to get some new tires. And that'll be our priority for right now. So we head to Walmart. It's about, 20 minutes back the way we came and get all four tires replaced. Not what I wanted to do. Not what I wanted to do this weekend, folks. And that eats up so much time that day one of our 2-day Sedona B-Day vacation is cooked. It's gone. It's eliminated. We're eating Carl's Jr. in the Walmart parking lot. Not how I want to celebrate the love of my life, of course, right? Next day, we've got a pretty simple plan. All we want to do, there's apple picking at this orchard near Slide Rock, which is a fun spot up in Sedona. We wake up, and there's a notification from the orchard that says, hey, apple picking closed 2 days ago. There's no more apples. There's no more apples. They're all gone. They're all gone. What? So we still decide to go to the park anyways. It's a fun park, Slide Rock. There's so much to do. A lot of hiking trails anyways. And we're walking by the apple orchard section because part of me didn't believe the newsletter. I was telling her, I was like, look, they probably just shot that out to reduce, that specific type of tourism. Maybe the seasons have moved on in their business, but there's still apples on the trees. Of course there's going to be apples on the trees. Trees aren't going to abide by the Slide Rock, park PR program, right? Trees are going to do what trees do. And sure enough, there were apples on the trees, but they were, far up, deeply far up these trees. I'm not climbing. I'm going to fall and hurt myself. And the ones that I was able to grab were not ripe whatsoever. And the ones that we were probably going to grab a couple days prior if we'd shown up were all over the ground. So, all that to say, the cursed Sedona trip left me more frustrated maybe than it should. But either way, fun time celebrating her birthday. Love her to death. And I will say, I mean, a close second is my affection for Alex Pereira. Let's get into this, gang. UFC 320. What a blockbuster pay-per-view for the UFC. This year, they've had a couple, I would say, lukewarm pay-per-views. A good chunk of the fight nights haven't been that exhilarating. But UFC 320, I think, felt more similar to a pay-per-view from a couple years back, where things are just firing on all cylinders and you've got names that you want to see fight. So let's kick it off with the main event. Alex Pereira. This guy is one of the most special combat sports athletes I've ever seen. 38 years old, coming off of a bad performance against Magomed Ankalaev, the guy who for years people were saying would beat him, outclasses him over the course of 5 rounds, and then instantly in the rematch, he blitzed him. 80 seconds. Alex Pereira, 80 seconds in the rematch. Nobody has ever lost their title by unanimous decision and then immediately regained it by TKO in the rematch. History-making effort from Alex Pereira. Now, it is interesting because he's fought 6 UFC champions. You've got Strickland, Jan Blachowicz, Adesanya, Yuri, Ankh, Jamal Hill. And within the 6 UFC champions he's fought, he's had 3 separate instances of a first fight and then a rematch. Adesanya was 2 different occasions. Yuri Prochazka was on 2 separate occasions. And now Magomed Ankalaev was on 2 separate occasions. And he only debuted like 4 years ago in the UFC. It is like 2021, he decides to come around and has accomplished so much in such little time. I don't know if we'll ever see someone as special as Alex Pereira. And let's not forget, even before his UFC debut, he was a deeply decorated Glory kickboxing 2-division champion, had a pretty historic kickboxing career and legacy. Like, I just don't know, when you think about special combat sports athletes like this that rise to the top in other disciplines and then blend over. I mean, you think about the Olympians that we've had in the UFC, the Cejudos, right? Youngest to capture the gold medal in 2008, I believe, and then transitioning to mixed martial arts, becoming a 2-division UFC champion. Like, that is such a special accomplishment that we do not celebrate or think about enough. And I'm not suggesting that Alex Pereira is on that same exact playing field of Olympic gold medal and then 2-division champ, but I mean, B is damn near it, right? 3-time UFC champion in 3 separate reigns, and now at 205, right? I don't know. I mean, he's beaten a lot of the top guys at the moment. So what do? Do you strip him and have him go up to fight Tom Aspinall, and maybe that's this blockbuster UFC White House main event? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I just wanted to start off our UFC 320 section by saying this guy is beyond special. And talking about special, can't not mention the co-main event. Merab Dvalishvili keeping the momentum going, right? This was his 3rd title defense this year, which is absurd, right? In a division like 135, it's a Shark Tank, and he's just not having any problems. You see so many, ranked bantamweights and unranked bantamweights having issues with the opposition, and it's close fight, back and forth affair, momentum swings, and all these 135-pound fights, and then the champion is just steamrolling people in dominant efforts. It's crazy. It's crazy. I think it was 50-44, 50-45, and then 49-46. Unsure what the judge's spread was on it, but Corey Sandhagen got manhandled. Absolutely manhandled. And it sucks because, I think that Corey is a really, really good fighter, but it is totally fair to say that he's 0-4 against the elite opposition of his weight category. You think about the Piotr Jan loss, you think about the Aljamain Sterling rear naked choke, you think about the TJ Dillashaw split decision loss, which, I mean, many believe that Corey won that one, but unfortunately, officially, he did not. And then now a big loss to Merab Dvalishvili in his first undisputed title crack. I mean, it's hard because it's what can you say, right? You knew exactly what Merab was going to do. In fact, you've had years of watching this guy at the top of the division. Just enacting the same game plan. He's implementing the same tools over and over, and they can't stop it. It's so unique. It's so unique. Nobody's beating him. And now he's tuning people up with his hands, right? Think about that sequence in round 2, dropping Corey Sandhagen, nearly having him out of there. He just keeps getting scarier. This is a guy that just keeps getting scarier. So I don't know who beats him. I don't think anybody does. I think that Merab versus Piotr Jan 2 in December, right? Either co-main or main event on that pay-per-view would be great. Give him a 4th title defense this year. I like Piotr, but I think the same happens. And then I think you can maybe do Corey Sandhagen versus Sean O'Malley. Now, that's a matchup that we've talked about for years. It's a striking delight. Sandhagen, while he's been much more grappling focused the last 2-3 years, is a very, very fun striker. And I think that could be a cool matchup that is preferential for both guys. I think Sean O'Malley would like someone that at his core is a striker, and Corey Sandhagen would probably appreciate the same. So give me that one. In terms of other dogs at the top of 135, I took a bit of a peek before today's programming. Umar and Mario Bautista, that's booked for October 25th. So neither of those gentlemen will likely be a contender for December. I don't think that they'll swoop in and get a title shot if Merab gets what he wants, which is a 4th fight this year. If Umar does beat Mario Bautista, part of me still thinks that he needs at least one more win before challenging for the title again. And if Mario Bautista beats Umar, give him the title shot. He's beating everybody that's been put in front of him. And yes, sometimes they haven't been exciting, like the Jose Aldo fight. But I think it's time we stop disrespecting Mario Bautista a little bit, because oh my God, this is a hot take, but in so many times, right? So many fights in the UFC, someone does what they need to do and they get praised for it, right? When Francis Ngannou switches up to wrestling Cyril Gane for 3.5, 4 rounds, people praise it and they say, "Oh my God, this is crazy. He's outclassing him. He's dominating him. He's doing what he needs to do to win." But when Mario Bautista does the same to opponents, it's treated as this slight on the sport. It's treated as this unreal offense. And granted, completely different contexts and states and all that. Sure, if you want to poke holes in that comparison, I'd agree with you. But it's that same sentiment of like, come on, he's doing what he has to do. And he's put on fun performances in the past. And maybe against Umar, he'll show shades of the Mario Bautista that he could be on October 25th. In terms of other guys, Song Yadong, right? So he beats Henry Cejudo in February via eye poke, I think, and is not booked for anything. There's not really rumors about Song Yadong this year. I mean, we are 8 months north of his prior performance. He is, I think, in the top 5, or at the very least top 7 at 135, and just nothing, which is kind of odd. If you Google Song Yadong next fight, Google AI will provide you with a rumor that he's fighting Sean O'Malley at UFC 323. That's what Google AI says. I'm not here to confirm or deny that. I'm not even here to suggest that that's something that I would want, truthfully. But I don't know. So that's kind of the complexion of the top. It makes all the sense in the world to do Merab versus Piotr 2, co-main to something bigger in December. All right, let's continue through our UFC 320 reaction. Yuri Prochazka doing what Yuri does best. I mean, 2 rounds down, not giving up on himself, not quitting, finding ways to win. And what I love about Yuri is an ability to know when is the right time to switch levels. And what I mean by that is he's a headhunter for the most part, but when he goes to the body, he commits 110%, and it's always at critical moments. That's always where you can start to see the momentum swing back to Yuri Prochazka, is when he, gets that half tie plum and just gadoosh, right? Slams his opposite hand into the midsection, cracking the ribs, right? Taking out the solar plexus, the cardio, the ability to weather damage, right? That's like when you see him go to the body, it is the start of something bigger. And that's exactly what occurred in round 3. Khalil Roundtree starts to fade, eats big body shots, backs up, pressure's off. He's looking to survive, and Yuri Prochazka doesn't give him the opportunity to. 1, 2, and a big 3, right? And what I like about that left hook, right? This is a little minor detail, but it's slightly off tempo. He goes 1, 2, 3, right? Waits for Khalil to respond to the jab and the cross, comes forward a little bit, right? Keeps that right hand down, and then that's right when Yuri Prochazka throws the left hook. It's not crazy. I'm not saying it's entirely sophisticated striking or the highest level of stand-up that we've ever seen. It's just a nice little note that the off tempo, the syncopation of that timing, creates this flatline KO. Khalil falls face first, and that is it. But what a fun fight it was. I think that so many people want to isolate the finishing sequence, but I would much rather I'd much rather just enjoy the fight overall because, Khalil Roundtree is a guy who always shows up, always bangs, is a deeply entertaining component at 205. And let's not pretend that he can't beat some of these big dogs. I mean, beats Jamal Hill quite recently. I'm forgetting his other fights. I'm trying to make a point about Khalil Rountree's success against elite opposition, and all I can think about at the moment is Jamal Hill, which isn't exactly great. But either way, I just don't love the fan base doing this binary. Let's celebrate Yuri. Let's on Khalil. Because I've seen that. I've seen a lot of that discourse online, and it's pretty disappointing. Let's celebrate both guys for coming in and giving their best, great efforts. And an unreal comeback from Yuri Prochazka, right? This doesn't need to be a sport where winners get the praise and losers get completely trashed and on. I just don't like. We see that so frequently. And look, sometimes everyone participates in that, right? But I with this specific fight, because of how good these fighters are as representatives, Khalil and Yuri. Let's just celebrate that matchup. All right, a couple other ones that I want to talk about before we take it to our first break in today's programming. Youssef Zalal. Now, Youssef Zalal is a name that you still might not be familiar with. He's a 145er. This is his second stint inside the UFC, and kid's making the most of it. Kid is absolutely making the most of it. Subs my buddy Billy Quarantillo in his return fight to the UFC and has been on a tear ever since. And just Saturday takes out a former UFC title challenger in round 1 in Josh Emmett. Submits him, right? Josh Emmett's not a guy that gets finished quickly. He went 5 hard rounds with Ilia Topuria, right? Who couldn't finish him. And Yair Rodriguez, I believe, is the only guy that's submitted him ever before, right? So second time that Emmett's been submitted. And I just don't really love the mute reaction from everybody, right? Like we're trying to find contenders, or excuse me, not really trying to find. We have so many good contenders in the 145 division. Right? Featherweight is beyond stacked. It feels like there's so much life in this division where, as at one point in time when Max Holloway was just dominating people after dominating people, it did feel like he's lapped the crowd. And now there's a whole new era of featherweights that can take over. So I just like how Youssef Zalal fits into this 145 picture. And it doesn't really feel like the fan base or the brass give too much of a despite what was a really impressive first round submission over Josh Emmett, right? Dana White at the post-fight press conference gets asked a question about Zalal, and he says, we'll take care of him, not $50K, but we'll take care of him. Not $50K, not a performance bonus, but we'll take care of him. What? That's my question. What? Why not? It's fair. It's fair to ask. Why not just give the kid $50,000? Give him a performance bonus. There's no limit. You make the rules, right? So there's no limit on how many performance bonuses you can give, right? That's a metric, a line in the sand that you draw. Redraw it, because when you see efforts like this that really, truly deserve some recognition, maybe that performance bonus, not maybe, absolutely a performance bonus. You sit up there on the microphone and say, not $50K, but we'll take care of him in this ambiguous Godfather-esque, line. I just don't understand it. They signed a $7.7 billion broadcast deal with Paramount That's only for the numbered events and the fight nights. And now Zuffa Boxing joins the picture. So it's like you have so much money, and the fighters historically have gotten paid very, very little of it. So when you have opportunities to showcase and happily grant them another 50K, which is pennies on your dollar, not taking it feels odd to me. Not taking that opportunity just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't seem great to me. And I know that that could be disagreed with and call me a snowflake or whatever, but it's like you've got like why the not? He just submitted a former UFC title challenger with ease and is on a crazy tear. I think he's on like an 8-fight winning streak. And is putting himself in this picture at featherweight, which is stacked at the moment. So why not? I guess is my question. Why not? All right, last line before we take it to break. I know that this is a very bloated UFC 320 reaction. Apologies, crowd. Appreciate you sticking with us on Combat Zone here. Last thing I want to talk about is Patchy Mix, because boy, that was an L on Saturday. That was a tough L for Patchy to swallow, and it gets me thinking that are we at the point where we can just say this guy's a bust? Can we write him off? Can we? I hate to say it in that way. Merab Dvalishvili went 0-2 in his first UFC start. So, I'm not saying that Patchy is completely done forever, but when you think about all of the that he talked before his debut, all of the trash talk that Patchy Mix was more than happy to give, and he hasn't backed up a single word of it, right? So I'll give you specific examples. In the UFC embedded, when he was fighting Mario Bautista, he says, and I quote, "I'm going to him up. He's a journeyman fighter. I'll submit him and his whole team." Proceeds to do nothing. Proceeds to do nothing against Mario Bautista except keep his chin on the center line and eat shots all night long. Additionally, that week at the UFC press conference against Mario, he says, and I quote, "I'm looking through him. I'm looking past him," is basically what Patchy's saying. I'm looking over him. Mario, not even a problem. I'm looking at the big dogs in the division. Well, hey, you can't get to the big dogs unless you beat a journeyman like Mario Bautista, which you couldn't do. So I don't know. It's just like this complete lack of humility coming in. And I get the guy's a Bellator champion and beat some pretty good names, right? James Gallagher, Magomed Magomedov, and Ralphion Stotts. Sergio Pettis, choking out Sergio Pettis is deeply impressive, continues to be, as Sergio got a massive win over the big. Hey, big ups to Sergio getting a spinning elbow comeback KO. What a great win for the kid. But it's just like I recognize your accomplishments pre UFC, but now I'm juxtaposing all of this talk with the lack of results. And what that leads me to conclude is that we've busted. Gang, we have busted. Patchy Mix, the experiment. Is it over? Is it not? I'll leave that up to your discretion, because not beating Mario, in fact, it's not even not beating him, doing so terribly against him, and then doing pretty poorly against this UFC debutant, Jacob. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the European last name. I'm going to butcher it. And I get he's a KSW champion, but right, you're getting tooled up by a UFC debutant, and you're sitting here saying that you're going to submit Mario and his whole team and that you're looking past him, and it just doesn't add up. And that's kind of the risk and reward of this game. Sometimes you talk and you can walk it, and it creates this really cool moment, and your highlight reels have these awesome lines from press conferences and trash talk that you've backed up. Sure, that happens. Look at all of the Conor McGregor hype edits. They are just full of his Mystic Mac predictions and words that he's been able to actually put substance behind. There is not going to be a Patchy Mix edit where his his trash talk is then connected to stellar UFC performances. Maybe what they can do is they can take his UFC trash talk and then stitch together his Bellator highlights. That might be the best you could possibly do, but certainly not at the moment. I mean, again, he had him in round 3. He goes for this guillotine. Terrible idea. Doesn't get it. Does find a reversal, and then just lays on the guy for the entirety of the third round. Not much effective damage, not much in the realm of searching for a submission, which I know he can do, right? And then loses the decision. So you look back on that third round and you say, hey, you've got less than 5 minutes to pull this comeback off and stop this guy. What did you do to initiate that stoppage? Nothing. Okay. So again, I just don't. I nothing against Patchy, but the hype has worn off. And after losing to Mario terribly, after losing to this UFC debutant terribly, I can just comfortably say that his ceiling is significantly lower than what he thinks. So, but talking about low ceilings, we've got a high one. So much left on today's programming. We talk with former boxing champion Alfonso Lopez, and we also talk about some stellar BKFC action from the Prudential Center this weekend. Do not go anywhere. We'll see you in a moment here on the Combat Zone. Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. Now, some very interesting results occurred at BKFC 82. Mike Perry versus Jeremy Stephens. The return of the king of violence. There's been so much, I would say, controversy to some extent about Mike Perry and his place in this new BKFC product helmed by Conor McGregor, right? He's been away for some time, and there was a lot of dispute about contracts and whether or not Mike was even going to fight in the first place, right? Back in BKFC, but they get it done. He's taking on Jeremy Stephens, which is a very violence-forward matchup. We can all agree that Jeremy Stephens, as much as people love to clown him for that iconic, who the is this guy moment from 300 years ago, he is a very powerful striker and not someone that you want to see opposite you in a bare knuckle setting. Mike Perry, more than happy to dance with the former UFC fighter and gets it done in the 5th round, right? That was a really, really, I would say, impressive performance. In the first round, you saw some really colossal crosses from Jeremy Stephens. Nothing affected Mike Perry. And from rounds 2 to 5, Perry just continued to up the pressure, landing with more frequency, having less regard for what Jeremy was going to throw back. And it resulted in a 5th round TKO. I don't know how many knockdowns. I want to say maybe 6 or 7 overall, with 2 or 3 in the 5th round. It was a lot. I mean, Jeremy continued to take knee after knee, and I think realized that this is what makes Mike Perry so special. In this bare knuckle setting, he's made of platinum, as the name would suggest. He is made of titanium. Nothing wobbles Perry. Nothing stuns him. Even when he looks like he's a little bit off balance after a shot, he's just right back into it. Jumps right back into the pocket of the most brutal combat sport that we currently have on the scene, and is successful time and time again. It's crazy. It genuinely is crazy how Mike Perry is acclimating to bare knuckle boxing so successfully, becoming the face of this promotion after being a journeyman UFC welterweight, right? This was a guy who was just not entirely notable inside his UFC career, but is revolutionized outside of it. And yes, he did go and fight Jake Paul, made probably a ton of money for that effort, right? And now is back to doing what he does best. In terms of total attendance, they were just over 10,000 at the Prudential Center, which is fantastic. Not exactly a sellout. Dave Feldman said, hey, this wasn't as much as we wanted. And I did see a lot of people, criticizing bare knuckle fighting championship, saying, oh, why would you go head to head with the UFC? Why would you try and compete with UFC 320? That's so stupid. That's so dumb. Well, Dave provides sort of an answer on that. They didn't mean to. There wasn't the intention of it. They had reserved that date. They'd reserved that location before UFC 320 was announced and placed at the T-Mobile in Vegas, right? So UFC hopping on it overshadows BKFC 82, which is, it's got to be frustrating. You think that you've got this open weekend in combat sports. You put your star, the face of your show, on it and have a really stacked card at New Jersey. And then UFC pops out of nowhere and says, hey, here's Alex Pereira pay-per-view main event. I will say there was a little bit of controversy in that Frankie Edgar was signed and attached to this card and was a really big marketing piece, right? New Jersey, Frankie Edgar, kind of synonymous. And like a week ago, it was revealed that he'd been pulled from the card, that he's no longer part of the card. I know Frankie is pretty frustrated, disappointed with how this has played out on his podcast. He's talked about the truth coming out soon. So maybe next week we'll have an update on why exactly he was pulled and for BKFC what the reasoning was, because it's a little bit cheap. It's a little bit cheap if you're taking someone like Frankie Edgar, who again I don't think needed to fight in BKFC. I don't think the last thing Frankie Edgar needs is more strikes to the face, with respect, and plucking him, putting him on this card, and then tearing him off after the tickets have been sold just doesn't seem all that well and good to me. Co-main event, you had the Queen of Violence, right? The inaugural Queen of Violence card between Christine Fadea and Jessica Borga. So Black Widow taking on Christine Fadea. Fadea going up in weight to Jessica Borga's 145-pound category and just beating her up. This was a duo that did trade knockdowns early on, but Christine just pulled away. And if you watch the finishing sequence, it's disgusting, right? A right hand from Christine, literally Jessica's nose over here, all the way over here. Unreal. Jimmy Rivera, former UFC veteran, getting a big win as well on Saturday night. So great to see him having success. And again, right, BKFC being a breeding ground for former UFC talent, not the worst thing in the world. Carl Roberson, another UFC talent that squared off with Khalil Roundtree, quite notably, gets kind of a big loss in the second round of BKFC 82. But what's more notable about Carl Roberson's BKFC debut is he had an ankle monitor. I don't know if we can throw a photo up of it, but he was literally wearing an ankle monitor during his fight and then gets TKO'd. That's got to be the worst loss I've ever seen. All right, so great stuff from BKFC. Two more topics here in this block. We've got Trump revealing the UFC White House event will take place on his 80th birthday, June 14th, I think, next year. He wants this UFC event to take place on his birthday. Dana White saying it'll be the greatest fight card ever assembled, both of those, I think, are kind of stupid. It's all silly. It's just all silly. What a dystopian world, right? But for Dana's side of this, it's the greatest fight card ever assembled. Really? It's gonna be the greatest fight card ever assembled? I don't believe that at all until I see it. UFC 300 was pretty damn good, but I'm sure that there's been better. And I seemingly with how the UFC is matchmaking their cards, right? I don't see this being the greatest fight card ever assembled. At the moment, 37% of ranked UFC fighters are booked for fights. 37% of the top 15 of each division. Only a third of ranked UFC fighters are booked to fight. So that means almost 70% of the ranked roster is sitting on the sidelines while we get contender series schlop coming through and, guys who just are not elite world class caliber on 10 and 10s that are better for the bottom line. With that business model and mindset, it's difficult for me to think that this is going to be the greatest fight card ever assembled, right? All right, last order of business before we take it to another break. The Smashing Machine craters at the box office. This is interesting. So the Smashing Machine only got $6 million over the weekend. Ticket sales were projected to be between 8 million and 15 million. This was the lowest debut of Dwayne Johnson's career. I guess he had a movie in 2010 that opened with 8.5 million. So this is bottom of the barrel for Dwayne Johnson, and also a huge blow to the studio A24, which put $50 million in to produce this movie, right? And when you look at some of the critical reception, people are not really that pumped up about the film. They do not love it, despite the 15-minute standing ovation at the place where it premiered. The actual fans are not really in love with Benny Safdie's new product. So I don't know. You would have thought that this was something that fans would be a little bit more interested in. I'm not saying hundreds of millions of dollars at the box office, but at least recouping the production and marketing budgets would probably be something I thought could happen. Lastly on this, Dwayne Johnson does speak out, gives a statement. So here's his post on Instagram, he starts off by saying, "From deep in my grateful bones, thank you to everyone who has watched The Smashing Machine. In our storytelling world, you can't control box office results, but what I realized you can control is your performance and your commitment to completely disappear and go elsewhere. And I will always run to that opportunity. It was my honor to transform in this role for my director, Benny Safdie. Thank you, brother, for believing in me. Truth is, this film has changed my life with deep gratitude, respect, and radical empathy. DJ," which, I mean, yeah, a little bit of a couple puff parts of that, paragraph. "This film has changed my life." I don't know, Dwayne. I'm not sure if it's changed your life. But I will say he's gotten a ton of praise for his performance in this role, right? The acting that he does provide in The Smashing Machine, turning into Mark Kerr, being unrecognizable, which I think is good. I'm glad that Dwayne is expanding outside of his, gray sweat-stained jungle t-shirts and button-ups that he seemingly has worn in every single film. So I'm not mad at that statement from him, and I think it's pretty fair. There was another movie that came out and similarly had lack of critical reception, lack of box office impact, and basically the response from the cast and crew was that, look, we can't control that. All we can control is what we provide making the film. So I don't know. Go see Smashing Machine. Go form your own opinion, and let me know if you like it, if you dislike it, or the otherwise. But I will say, you might like what we've got coming up next. Still today on the program, Alfonso Lopez trying to make a bid for BKFC. Can the former boxing world champion find his way into the bare knuckle waters? We find out soon on the Combat Zone. Folks, welcome back to the Combat Zone. Now, interesting times we have in combat sports where people can find career revivals in the bare knuckle boxing waters. Latest to try and create that bridge is former boxing champion Alfonso Lopez. This cat carries that Mexican fighting spirit, has taken on the best of the best in the boxing world in his heyday, and now wants to see if there's some more juice left in the tank. Let's waste no more time and take it over to our friend Alfonso Lopez. Gentlemen, a very special guest joining the Combat Zone booth. You might know him as a former WBC champion, also the promoter of LT Great Promotions. It is Alfonso Lopez. Alfonso, welcome into the booth, sir. How are you?
Yes, sir. How are you, man? I'm doing well. I'm glad to be on and look forward to, getting some content out.
Yes, sir, baby. Yes, sir. Man, let's talk about this. 35 wins, 27 of them by knockout. But I want to take it back to the first one, brother. Do you remember, Alfonso, the first time you stepped in between the ropes?
Absolutely, man. I remember getting that. I was fighting a very tough veteran in my pro debut in Corpus Christi on a Evander Holyfield undercard. And why it's so memorable is I was in a 4-rounder against a very tough veteran who headbutt me, cut me between the eyes. And I got about 3 or 4 years of experience in one fight, so it was always a memorable fight for me.
He was trying to use some of those savvy tricks, man. I mean, that's dirty tactics.
Yeah, he did it all, man. I handled it very well, but he did it all. But when you're cut and you've never been cut like that, everybody responds differently. And it was nothing I wasn't used to, but it was the first fight I've had a serious cut between the eyes where the blood's in the eyes, and you have to deal with that as you fight. And it blurs everything for sure.
Yeah. Now, I believe, right, Alfonso Lopez III, your father, grandfather, both boxers as well, if I'm not mistaken?
No. They weren't boxing. They did amateur boxing. They never really created anything significant. But my family, Hispanic family, Mexican family, they all were just big fans. I had some uncles who did amateur boxing, and so they were just teaching us in the backyard. And man, when I got to college, I picked it up and went full time with it.
What was their reaction when you were like, I'm actually pretty good at this? You have a 2-time Texas Golden Gloves champ. Like, I can go far with this.
Yeah. Oh, they were absolutely shocked. They're like, man, this is what you should have always been doing. I was a football player. I went to Sam Houston to play football. And so, yeah, they were extremely excited. And they were like, man, this is what you should have always been doing.
Yeah, I love it. Take me back to the periods where you had those WBC, NAVO light heavyweight, NABF light heavyweight, the continental titles. In that frame of your career, when you're getting these belts, getting the gold, bring me back to the mindset, right? Did you ever feel that
I've reached that mountaintop, and any of that like complacency step in, or was it just a motivator to keep cooking and keep going?
No, it was always a motivator because they were just minor titles, and
Yeah.
I think the major goal was to get that world title, and my very first one was at 168 pounds when I won a WBC Intercontinental, and it got me the big shot against Kelly Pavlik, and I thought, oh man, hey, let's get in here, let's beat Pavlik, and we got to get a shot, or we got to get a big deal, we got to sign with a bigger promoter, as I've always been promoting myself. And I got the fight against Pavlik. Obviously, it didn't go my way, and I tried to rebound, had a couple injuries, but then I picked up, I moved up in weight. I was an amateur at 178, so when I started my pro career, I started at light heavy, went down to 68. I had one fight where they tried to get me down to 60. It was a very bad
Sheesh.
decision, and I was just way too big, couldn't make it, fought dehydrated, got beat, and after that, I had some injuries I had to take care of. I had to have some surgeries, and man, when I came back, I was like, listen, I'm fighting at 75. His body's barely holding, he's barely able to make 75, and now I feel like 205, is the better bet for me. So that's why we're looking at some different things. We're looking at some bare knuckle stuff. So we're excited
Mm.
about it. Yeah.
Let's talk about that, man. Taking the gloves off and maybe stepping into the BKFC waters. Where did this idea come from? How was this planted in you?
Well, man, I think just watching it, I always thought I was just fascinated by these guys. They're just bruisers, man. Tough guys, big
Mm.
guys, but man, just getting after it. And I never really have ever tried to do anything besides, I've been in some street fights as a kid, but that's a very long time ago. And so I mean, actually, Jake Holt, my buddy Jake, he was like, man, he kind of brought it up, and he was like, hey man, do you ever think about doing bare knuckle? And he's like, I know some contacts, and I was like, man, I've never thought about it, but I'm down. Don't get me wrong, but it is it is a different world per se. You know what I mean? Like, you always hear that arts are different, whether it's jujitsu, mixed martial arts, it's boxing, it's wrestling. You got to respect every art. They're all
Mm.
are different. Even bare knuckle yes, you're throwing hands and it's only hands, but man, there's just some different things physically that have to happen when you fight bare knuckle, that you have to be dialed in defensively and offensively. And I like the challenge. It looks exciting to me. And so, man, I was like, man, throw my name in the hat. I'm ready to, get one fight, and I want the big fight. I want the title fight.
You make such an interesting point of those fundamental differences between
Yeah.
gloved and ungloved. Sometimes it works. Austin Trout, a champion in BKFC, right? Former big boxing name. But other times, right, you see these boxers cross over and it
So,
goes very poorly. How
yeah.
do you ensure that you are of the likes of the Austin Trouts and having that same success and don't fall into the pitfalls of some of the other boxers that try and swim in the bare knuckle waters?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and positions. You gotta train with MMA gloves on. You gotta spar with the puffies, the little smaller 6-ounce gloves that ain't as big as boxing gloves. You're gonna get tagged if you're in. You get so used to sparring with 16-ounce gloves. Things cover up easy. I can put my hands up and not get hit at all. I got a headgear on. We're safe, man. You take that headgear off, you put them little MMA gloves on, you put them puffies on, and you're gonna get hit in spots differently, and angles that you don't think you can get hit, and you got to prepare for those things. So if you don't really dial in and get yourself very serious about the training without gloves on, I mean, even working defensively with nothing on your hands, where you're just properly pairing and catching gloves appropriately, it's a different world per se. Like I say, so you got to mix it in. You got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to know that, hey, yes, I'm a very good boxer. I've always had gloves on. I've had a headgear. Hey, now we're gonna take this headgear away. And I sparred in boxing a lot of times without a headgear. Don't get me wrong, but when now you're wearing 6-ounce gloves, 8-ounce gloves. I mean, those are boxing size gloves. I mean, you're you
Yeah.
know you're getting hit with guys that are just wearing these little, or just putting on the 4-ounce MMA gloves and sparring straight up. I remember having a sparring partner with these 4-ounce gloves on him. 2 minutes in, he's cut and beat up, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I didn't really want to do that to you, bro, but like,
I didn't even
so
hit
then,
you that hard. Yeah.
yeah, so, because you're working, you're trying to get better, you're just trying to get comfortable. It's not like you're trying to kill each other in sparring, but man, it takes you back. It's different. The reach is different. The perception of range and all those things all come into play. So it is very much different. I think that's what fighters got to understand. You see it on TV and they just get after it. But
Yeah.
if you properly train yourself to be strategic with your distance and your range, and you understand where you are, very similar how Austin Trout is handling his business and picking guys apart. It's still an exciting fight.
Awesome stuff from our friend Alfonso Lopez. I cannot wait to hear more from him after this quick break. Don't go anywhere here on the Combat Zone. Welcome back to the Combat Zone, folks. We've got some more fun action from the former boxing champion Alfonso Lopez. Let's hear a bit more about why he thinks he can take on the best in BKFC.
When you look at the BKFC's heavier crew, right, that section of the roster, what jumps out to you? Is it something that makes you salivate, right? Guys that you go, hey, this dude's getting a co-main spot and he's garbage.
Yeah. I don't know. I never want to call anybody just straight garbage. Everybody has a different style. I'm a very respectful guy of anybody who steps in, any kind of combat sports. So I'm not a big trash talker. I just want to prove myself against the best fighters in the world. And if I'm beat, I'm beat. If I beat someone, I beat someone. But at the end of the day, everybody, it's 100% respect to anybody who decides to fight like that. But yeah, you do see a difference in just technique per se. Just how strategic. You see a lot of guys. They just get in there and they go after it. Hey, well, if defensively you got to handle guys that got game like that are willing just to come in, hit and get hit. I was always taught from the cut and shoot style from my old trainer, Henry Harris. We call them Bick. It's like, man, we would rather give than receive sport. And so you got to have some movement, you got to have some leg footwork, you got to be in condition to make those things happen. And that's where I think I could separate myself from a lot of these guys and really frustrate them and beat them up. I don't have a problem with fighting, no problem. I have Mexican blood in me. I will sit there and bang away. Don't get it twisted. But I am a smart person as well, right? I know how to move and do some things.
And I'll spit venom for you, Alfonso. I'll be your Paul Heyman. I'll make sure that the respect gets translated to some heat, maybe.
I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
But specifically, when you think about the best in the world, right, and some of the top-tier talent that BKFC has to offer, are there names that might maybe stand out to you? Who would be a preferential debut for Alfonso Lopez?
Man, I think the champions at 205, I wouldn't even, I don't know the big heavyweights, how big they are. One of the guys I just saw fight was, I think, Chris Kamuzi. I don't want to butcher his name, great fighter, very tough talent. But, it's a guy I think that we would match up great with, that I think we could beat as a champion. And, and that's who you always want to fight. You want to fight the guys that really are going to test you and push you and get you up out of bed to get your training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because not every name brings out that level of intensity to fighters. You know what I mean? You don't get the right name. You're like, yeah, you slack your ass off. You don't get up at 5 a.m. after all. You get up at 6 a.m. And so you want the names that put a little fire in your.
I think a person that we were speaking about was one Mike Richmond, the Marine, who's had a really excellent career in BKFC. When you watch Mike fight, what's kind of the takeaway?
Oh, so Mike does some great things as well. He's a bruiser. He's a come forward type, straight line right at you. He has a little bit of a lean back to avoid some punches. But he's game. He's always in great shape, and he brings hard punches straight out the gate. He's somebody you got to be very skilled with legs, and you got to be able to outbox him because he throws very crisp punches. Love the opportunity. My business partner in the El Tigre promotion is a Marine, so he may not like it too much if I go beat up on a Marine. But all of my good friends are Marines. But Mike would have to get it. I'm sorry, Mike.
Folks, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Combat Zone. Massive appreciation for Alfonso Lopez. We will keep you all posted on his journey into BKFC, whether it's successful or not. Make sure you always stay tuned. 10 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays. Programming update Mark your calendars. We're coming at you Thursday evenings to give you the best, the latest, the greatest coverage in combat sports. I'm your host, Ben the Bane Davis, and I'll see you next time on the Combat Zone.